Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Drake London has been dominating the Dynasty world over the last week. Who would we take? We'll tell you next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today is Michelle Magdziuk from Locked On Fantasy Football. You guys know her very well. You can also check out her work over on NFL Network. She's a fantasy analyst over there. Michelle, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Happy to be here. Happy to fill in for my wife who just left you guys hanging.
Broke up with me. That's fine.
Just left you hanging and, sadness. Her last show was on Friday. So I'm happy to be here. And I'm excited to talk about some Dynasty because I always just focus on redraft league.
That's right. We play in a Dynasty league together. So you're very familiar with this space. Over the weekend, I was on Reddit, which is always a strange and scary place to be. I was on a Reddit thread that has over 500 replies on an argument between who would you rather have between Drake London and Marvin Harrison Jr. Right now, over on Dynasty League Football, the ADPs are very close. We've got Drake London at wide receiver 9, 14th overall. Marvin Harrison Jr. at wide receiver 11, 16th overall. So I ask you, Michelle, who would you rather have in your Dynasty leagues?
At first, it seems so obvious, right? You're like, well, How is it not Drake London? Because he was the wide receiver 5 overall last year. But in average scoring, only wide receiver 14. And I do think that was probably his ceiling at 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns. Like, that seems like his ceiling. And you know what? If that's what you get out of him each year, you're going to be very, very happy with that. And he is still only 23 years old. He doesn't turn 24 until July. So the age difference between Drake London and Marvin Harrison are minuscule, really. I mean, Harrison turns 23 in August, about a year apart. If it was just redraft, like just talking about next year, I do think Drake London has the better year. But I do think Marvin Harrison's the better asset to have in Dynasty right now for the long term. This year, I'm still a little bit nervous because they didn't change their offensive coordinator and Drew Petzing. That if they changed the offensive coordinator or changed anything there, I would feel more like stronger about Marvin Harrison this year. But I think it might take 2 years to really see him fully break out.
So here's where I struggle. First of all, I'm a massive Drake London fan. Anybody that has listened to this podcast over the last couple of years, even going back to 2022 pre-draft, love Drake London. But Marvin Harrison Jr. was just a much better college prospect. And I know that doesn't mean all that much in Dynasty, but it kind of does, right? Marvin Harrison Jr. was viewed as this generational talent. While Drake London, a lot of people thought the Falcons reached on Drake London inside the top 10. Once you get into the NFL, like that just doesn't matter as much. But because we're still so early in Marvin Harrison's career, part of me just feels like, let's not overreact. We thought he was a generational player coming into the league. He was valued as a top 6 Dynasty guy. He had 800 yards and 8 touchdowns as a rookie playing as an X receiver. The breakout's coming. But again, you look at Drake London's numbers and his fit in that offense, and it just feels so safe.
It does feel a little bit safe, but at the same time, if you go game by game, I mean, a lot of games in the 60 to 70 yard range, which again is fine, especially if he catches that touchdown. But it was 2 massive games that really skewed his points by the end, especially with the week 18 game, which most people don't play in week 18, right? That was his biggest game by far of the year. Well, he did have a huge game in week 5 too, but still his biggest game in week 18. And that was without Darnell Mooney there. So he got 18 targets. Mooney was out. Now his 2 of his 3 games with Michael Penix Jr. Amazing, right? So is that what we're going to see out of him? But again, it was 13 and 18 targets in those last 2 games. I think he'll be fine. I think Drake London is a guy I would want to roster in Dynasty. He's a guy I want to roster next year. It's just if I'm taking the bet on one of these 2 in Dynasty for the long term, I'm not going to give up on Marvin Harrison Jr. after one disappointing rookie season.
It wasn't even that disappointing. Like 800 yards and 8 touchdowns for a rookie receiver. Like our expectations are just so high now.
I think it hurt so bad because what we saw from him in the first quarter of week 2, I mean, that was pretty much so much of his production of the year came 130 yards and 2 touchdowns in that first quarter of week 2. And then he just didn't do anything for so long before having another good game. And then after week 8, I mean, it was all just not much of anything giving you here for what you paid for him. So yeah, the expectations were just so super high for him last year. And now they're much lower. What's going to change from last year for him for this year? I do think Drew Petzing is a candidate to be fired mid-season. I know I'm like hating on this guy, but I can't believe they didn't move on from him last year. But they need a more creative offense.
All right, so let me ask you this, because I think you and I both agree Kyler's a better quarterback right now than Michael Penix. But of these two quarterbacks, which one would you prefer your star receiver getting the ball from? Because I can make an argument that actually Michael Penix is a better fit because he's a great athlete, but he's more of a stationary pocket passer. Where Kyler, I just feel like with that Arizona offense, it's always going to be pretty balanced because Kyler wants to run so much. And for me, that might, again, I feel very conflicted a bit about this, but I think Penix is going to be really, really good next year.
I do. I think Penix can be good. And also what I like about Penix is he seems very willing to just pepper one guy, right? We love that for fantasy. Yep. Kyler Murray has not, even when he had DeAndre Hopkins, like, yeah, he gave him a lot of targets, but mostly it came down to those touchdowns of that good year. He still likes to spread the ball around. Like he doesn't just kind of rely on one guy. We also know with the Cardinals, they have Trey McBride there, and that seems to be Kyler Murray's safety blanket, right? When something goes wrong, he goes to Trey McBride. It's not him looking for, at least last year, wasn't him looking for Marvin Harrison when he was in trouble. With Drake London, it was like Michael Penix couldn't keep his eyes off of Drake London at all in the 3 games that he played last season. So, yeah, I mean, but we also have to then.
Do you know how many targets that Drake London got from Michael Penix in the 3 games they played together? Just give me a guess.
Well, I have it right here. So it was like 36 or 38 or something.
39 targets in 3 games. He was averaging 118 yards per game. So I mean, that's part of it that's hard to figure out is what's it going to look like with Michael Penix as the full-time starter? Because Michelle, the first half of the season, I mean, he was playing with Kirk Cousins, who had almost no arm strength. So the ADOT was lower. They weren't pushing the ball down the field. Is there a chance that Penix just unlocks a side of Drake London that we haven't seen yet in the NFL?
There's also a chance though that Penix could completely fall on his face next year, right?
Yes.
And that's another risk. We know Kyler Murray, like we know his floor, and it's not like Kyler Murray's this perfect quarterback. He has up and down games for sure, but he's like, they're not going to bench Kyler Murray. At least it seems very implausible that he gets benched next year, right? Or anytime soon. With Michael Penix, we still need him to prove that he is a starting quarterback in the NFL. And that's the risk. Now, if they do end up trading Kirk Cousins, it seems like Penix would have a much longer leash. We'll see what happens with Cousins, but I'm with you. I do think Michael Penix takes a step forward next year. He proves he can play in this league, and with him being a stationary quarterback and a pocket quarterback, and the way he targeted Drake London last year, it's hard to not be excited about London's potential.
So, Michelle, is this one of these things where if you have Drake London, you're just not trading him for Marvin Harrison Jr., but if you have Marvin Harrison Jr., you're just not trading him for Drake London either? Like they're almost untradeable for each other because they're so close in value.
Yeah, that would be the issue, right? You're worried either way because you can, as we're talking right here, I think I just changed my mind 5 different times about which one I'd rather have as just having this conversation. So yeah, it might just be one of those. It's just too close to call. Now, if you can get something on top for either of these guys by trading one,
of course, if you could get it, like, let's say it's a 2nd round pick on top of it, you do that in a heartbeat. I personally like to root for Drake London, so I probably would prefer London on my fantasy team and on my dynasty team. But if you force me to pick, I probably would still go with Marvin Harrison Jr. just because I think the talent, he's just a better athlete than what Drake London is. And I think he's going to figure it out, but I don't feel super strong in that stance.
Yeah. And what's funny is that the thing that Harrison struggled with last year was separation, which it could either be the scheme was so bad that it wasn't able to get him open, or, Harrison Jr. needs to change up his route running, and hopefully he's working on that this offseason, probably a little bit of both. But when you're comparing him to Drake London, that's not London's forte either, is separation. So when you're talking about 2 guys that struggled to separate, and what we saw out of Marvin Harrison in college, and it's hard to bring up college stats, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're only 1 year removed from that. How excited were we when he was coming into the league? I'm still going to hold that hope. And I don't want to trade, like, you're trading him low right now if you trade him.
That's why I'm not moving him for Drake London, even though I love Drake London. But Michelle, let's get to some other burning questions in dynasty leagues, including which year 2 quarterback do you prefer, Bo Nix or Drake Maye? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I love on FanDuel that you can bet on the series lines, who you think is going to win the series, even as the series are going on. Plus, you can always make your futures bets on who's going to win the Eastern Conference Championship, the Western Conference Championship, and of course, the NBA Finals. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Every day on tomorrow's show, Matt Williamson will be here to answer your Twitter questions, so make sure you tune in for that. But Michelle, we've got another interesting decision here. QB2 from the 2024 draft. Right now we have, year 2 quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels, QB3. Caleb Williams, QB9. And then after that, it's very interesting. Bo Nix, who was, I believe, the 5th quarterback drafted last year, is at QB10. And Drake Maye, the 3rd quarterback drafted, is at QB12. And there's a pretty significant gap between them in startup drafts, about a full round. Of these year 2 quarterbacks, which one do you prefer?
Again, it's going to be different between if I'm drafting for next year and I want to, like, I'm a contender right now and I want to win immediately next year. My team is so strong. Then I'm just going to stick with Bo Nix because, I do think he'll be probably right there on the edge of top 10, top 12 again for next year with Sean Payton. And it'll be fine, right? Going to be up and down. He was much, much better at home than away last year. We'll see if those splits keep up. But it does seem like Sean Payton's quarterbacks tend to do that, right? At home, they're just better. But I will say, like, Drake Maye offers a lot more upside for Dynasty with his rushing. I mean, he had 421 rushing yards last year, despite starting just 12 games and really only playing in 10 games. Just to compare that, Bo Nix had 430 rushing yards in all 17 full games played. So only 9 fewer rushing yards. Caleb Williams, who is a bigger runner too, right? A bigger scrambler, 489 rushing yards in his full 17 games played too. So Drake Maye offers a ton of rushing upside here. We know the situation he was in last year, absolutely brutal. I mean, it was just the Patriots offense was terrible. He didn't have any weapons. It's not like his weapons this year look amazing, but I do think getting Travion Henderson, who's a pass-catching back, helps him. I really like Kyle Williams, the wide receiver they took in the 3rd as a prospect. I think he can be a big upgrade there from Demario Douglas or whatever else they were throwing out there. And then Stephon Diggs, when he is ready to go, he is going to help out Drake Maye. So I'm actually leaning Drake Maye. I would prefer him. And I do think you can get Drake Maye plus more if you're to trade Bo Nix for him.
We have to remember with quarterbacks, it's not based on talent, it's based on situation. And that's why someone like Jalen Hurts, who is QB4 in dynasty leagues right now, is just worth so much more than someone like Patrick Mahomes, who's QB6. Obviously, the rushing stuff matters, but the situation matters so much. I think Drake Maye is going to be a much better real-life quarterback than what Bo Nix is going to be. He's 3 years younger. But he doesn't have Sean Payton calling plays. It's Mike Vrabel as the head coach, and it's Josh McDaniels. And while Josh McDaniels is a proven good OC, it's not Sean Payton. And I trust that the Broncos and Sean Payton are going to be able to figure out a way to get this passing offense to be very productive, even with, when you want to say lackluster weapons, Michelle. I mean, is that a nice way to put what the Broncos receiving core is right now? It's not always going to be that way. Eventually they'll get somebody, but I think, if I was forced to pick between these 2 quarterbacks, I think I would take Bo Nix pretty easily.
See, this is my worry. Is he threw 29 touchdowns last year, which is amazing for a rookie quarterback. Like, so I'm not going to be surprised if that goes down. I know they added Evan Ingram. I mean, that's really the main weapon they added for him, right? And Evan Ingram's not a touchdown scorer at all.
Nope.
I also think last year they just had no running backs, right?
No.
To lean on, especially near the goal line. I mean, Bo Nix got 4 rushing touchdowns. They draft RJ Harvey, what is in the second round, right?
Second round. Yep.
So I do think they're going to lean on the run a little bit more, at least try to. We got to see if Harvey's good. And I could just see regression happening for Bo Nix. Also, I just think what he did last year is probably about his ceiling, right? And if that's
maybe.
I think Bo Nix is more like a little bit more mobile Jared Goff or Kirk Cousins type, where that's going to be the points you get from him year in, year out. And cool, like you'll take that quarterback 10 to 12. But if I'm going, I think Drake Maye has a much higher ceiling to blow up in value, right? I don't think Bo Nix is ever going to be worth like a ton in Dynasty League.
No, I can't see Bo Nix ever being like a top 5 quarterback. It feels like he's destined. It feels like CJ Stroud and Bo Nix are just destined to be like in the QB 7 to QB 9 range for the rest of their careers. I will say one thing that makes me a little bit nervous, and I think this is the same thing that's going on with Patrick Mahomes right now in Kansas City, is that Denver's defense is incredible. Like, it's awesome. And they added to it with Jahdae Barron in round 1 this year. There's just not going to be this need for them to be in these shootout games. Like, I think they're going to be able to win a lot of games like 21-17 and 20-13. And Patrick Mahomes has had the same problem because the Chiefs defense is so good. They don't need to go out and try to light up the scoreboard. They can play more ball control offense. I think New England's defense is going to be good this year as well, but not of the same caliber of those teams. And maybe we just see Drake Maye having to throw the ball more often and having to put up more points. That is my concern with Bo Nix, is that the ceiling just might not be very high there.
Yeah, I mean, that Broncos defense, like you said, it's already scary and it's just going to keep getting scarier. So I think that's a huge point too. And the Patriots defense is far away from being elite again. So yeah, that makes me lean Drake Maye even more. I just think Drake Maye, they're going to have to lean on Drake Maye to win games and to just be their entire offense. And for Bo Nix, they don't really have to do that. He can be the game manager because of Sean Payton's play calling. Hopefully now they have a running game, right? So I think he's going to be more of the game manager type role. Drake Maye, if he's going to make it in the NFL, unfortunately, he's going to have to do a lot more than Bo Nix is doing, because that's just what his team needs out of him.
Yeah, as our residential San Francisco 49ers expert, I do want to ask you, Drake Maye is currently being drafted at QB 12, Brock Purdy QB 15. Which one would you prefer in Dynasty Leagues?
Brock Purdy, because we already saw he broke out. We already know he's a good fantasy quarterback. And also he's about to get paid. Drake Maye, we still need to hope that he even makes it. With Bo Nix and Drake Maye, we still need to all hope that either of them make it to their second contract, right?
And I think they will. I have a lot of belief in both quarterbacks, but I don't think you're necessarily wrong. And this is one of the things that Kate and I talked about a lot, is there is a lot of value in drafting these quarterbacks and rostering these quarterbacks that are just going to be locked in starters for the next 4 or 5 years. And while we think Drake Maye and Bo Nix will get there, we know that Brock Purdy will be there. He's going to get a contract extension this offseason that's likely going to guarantee him at least 3 more years, at least, as a starter in San Francisco. That has a lot of value.
And I'm going back to Drake Maye here because I was trying to pull up this stat while we were talking. But we're talking about he's going to have to throw a lot this year, right? So in the 7 games that Drake Maye threw at least 30 pass attempts, he did average 17.8 fantasy points per game. That's like pretty much exactly what Bo Nix averaged last year. 30 is a high number, but he still did it in 7 of his 10 full games played. And with the defense being bad, we expect that he's going to be throwing that often. So, this just solidifies my feeling that I was going for here, that it's Drake Maye.
All right, let's talk about 3 wide receivers who are in their 30s and which ones we prefer on our Dynasty League or Dynasty teams. We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and the news never stops. host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And make sure you check out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Michelle, you and Vinny do a fantastic job. We're going to get you ready for redraft season. Drafts are already starting. I have a draft that's lined up for Memorial Day weekend, so it's coming up. Make sure you check out the podcast. All right, let's finish up the show by talking about some 30-year-old receivers. Right now on Dynasty League Football, we have Mike Evans at wide receiver 31. We've got Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 37. And then Devonte Adams, wide receiver 43. Adams is the oldest of the three receivers, and that's probably why the ADP is suppressed. But of those three receivers, Evans, Hill, Adams, which one do you want on your Dynasty rosters?
I'm still sticking with Tyreek Hill because we are just a year removed from him being the wide receiver 1 overall. And the year before that, the wide receiver 3, right? Last year was terrible for him. But I do just think it was a mess of a year with the way his season started with the whole, getting arrested thing. And then he was dealing with the wrist injury all year long and then finally underwent surgery after the season. There's also apparently an ankle injury in there somewhere. I just don't believe he fell off that quickly from going from an 1,800 receiving yard guy to 959 last year. And also, he did just turn 31 years old, so younger than the other two guys by a year or so. And I just think there's more left in his tank. And also, among this group, he has the clear-cut easiest opportunity for the most targets. Like, if he gets 170 targets again this year, if he stays with the Dolphins, I don't think any of us are going to be shocked. Mike Evans, with the competition he has for targets, he's not going to get up there. He's never been that high of a target guy anyways. He makes the big plays and all the touchdowns. And now Davante Adams, he has been a huge target guy, but how many does he get playing with Puka Nacua? He's probably no longer the wide receiver 1 on his team. And he turns 33 in December. So, a couple more years older. So I'm going with Tyreek Hill here.
That's my gut instinct as well, just because I think the ceiling is the highest. But I also would say, and please disagree with me if you think I'm wrong, I think the floor is the lowest for Tyreek Hill. I think there's a knucklehead factor where I could see him being on 3 different teams this year, just because of it's Tyreek Hill, right? And I don't feel that way about Mike Evans, obviously, and Davante Adams. So that's the only thing that makes me a little nervous. I will say for Davante Adams, he played 14 games last year, had 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, playing with washed up Aaron Rodgers, Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew. I mean, it was rough, and he was still very productive. And he's been very productive over the last couple of years, playing with some really bad quarterbacks. And now he gets into a situation where he's no longer the clear-cut one, but he's got Matt Stafford throwing him the football. And we know that Sean McVay is just going to condense all the targets down to Puka Nacua and Davante Adams. I kind of feel the safest about Adams. I don't know if he's got the ceiling of Tyreek Hill, but I think of these 3 receivers, he's the one I think I feel the best about just being locked into a high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2 role every single week that he's healthy.
Yeah, this is my thing with Adams is that for all of these guys, they probably have maybe 1 or 2 more good years in them. But with Adams hitting 33 years old, right? Like, even if he has another top 10 wide receiver season, his value is not going to increase. With Tyreek Hill right now, his value's low after his lower than ever because of how bad last year was and all the drama going on this offseason, right? But his value could increase like crazy if he were to be a top 5 wide receiver again, because he'd still be only 31 years old next offseason. People would still buy in that he has another year or 2. With Adams, like I said, even if he's top 10 again, and a down year from last year, top 10 wide receiver still in average scoring, obviously still amazing. But I don't see his value increasing really no matter what he does. That he'll be 34 next season.
So if you're the Tyreek Hill dynasty manager, how do you want kind of all this drama in Miami to play out? Because I would assume the best situation is for him to just get his stuff together, right? And play with Tua, because he's played very well there, rather than getting traded to another team, trying to fit in with that roster. Miami's scary because of the Tua injury history. And, we saw how big of a drop-off there is in Tyreek's production when Tua's not playing. But what's the ideal scenario here for Tyreek?
I mean, I do think it's to stay there, and it's for Tua to stay healthy. Now, if he were to get traded, I do think he can be great on many teams. Like, I don't think he needs to have the perfect quarterback or the perfect situation.
He doesn't need to have Patrick Mahomes, obviously, to be a number one receiver, right? Like we've seen that.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to think of like a spot for him though. Like the 49ers wouldn't trade for him anyways, because they said they don't take anyone that has that
like
type of
Buffalo.
History. Yeah, I know we all want everyone to go to Buffalo, right?
Well,
with Josh Allen would be amazing. It's just like how much they spread the ball around, but they didn't used to do that with Diggs. So
and the Dolphins aren't trading Tyreek Hill to Buffalo. You know what I mean? So that's what about like a team like Houston, right? That Houston has been very aggressive going out and getting these receivers. Would that make sense?
I would hate that. I think there's too much competition there.
Pittsburgh?
For Mason Rudolph to be throwing him the ball.
Oh, no, Skylar Thompson.
Will Howard. No, I want him to just stay with Miami. I do.
I think you're right. I think that's the best of all the situations. That's how we get him back to being a wide receiver one in our fantasy leagues.
The Raiders. Geno Smith would actually be kind of interesting. Geno Smith can throw deep.
Now let's go. Now that's a fun fit. See, that's one where it makes sense because all of their other receivers, Jacoby Myers, Jack Bash, they're underneath guys. Brock Bowers, another underneath guy. You add Tyreek Hill to that offense, and now we're cooking. But I do think Miami's the best possible situation for him. I hope they figure things out. I hope Tua can stay healthy because that offense is a lot of fun to watch. I know they've had their shortcomings in the playoffs, but when they're clicking, they're a lot of fun, and Tyreek Hill is super productive there when he's right.
They have to get back. Like that offense last year, they targeted Jonnu Smith just way too often, and they lost a lot of games because of it. Because it's just they need to fix their offense. They're trying to. They change offensive coordinators, I believe, right? They just make that up. They did. They had to if they were so bad last year. So I do just think they get back on track as long as Tua stays healthy, which is a big ask because it happens a lot. And then we didn't even mention neither of us are choosing Mike Evans, but I do roster Mike Evans in a couple dynasty leagues.
Good receiver.
It's fine to have, like during the season, you're happy to have him. And during the off season, you're always trying to trade him. Yeah. I've been trying to trade him for like 3 off seasons, even no matter how consistent he is and how high he ends. No one wants to trade for Mike Evans.
It's 100% true. I have him in several leagues and I cannot move him at all.
No. And now he has, like, Mike Evans will still be great. We know the touchdowns are always there, and he's going to make his big plays. He's going to have up and down games just like he always has his whole career. But them adding Emeka Egbuka too, and then having Jalen McMillan come into his second year, and then Chris Godwin coming back healthy. Hopefully he's healthy. And then Bucky, we know the running backs get a lot of targets too, and not even mention Cade Otton.
It's Cade Otton's a decent tight end.
Yeah, that's a lot of competition for targets. So definitely going with Tyreek or Devonte Adams over him.
They just have much higher ceilings than what Mike Evans has. I think we're locked into Mike Evans having 1,000 yards and 7 or 8 touchdowns, but that's pretty easy to replace. Whereas I think Tyreek Hill, if he's right, you can get 1,400 yards and double-digit touchdowns. It's just way more valuable to have that player on your roster.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Make sure you check out the show on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcast. We are free and available on all platforms. Make sure you follow Michelle over on Twitter at BallBlastem. Make sure you check out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow with Matt Williamson.
Bye, y'all.